The finest knights in Europe are charging across a field in northern France. They are the flower of French chivalry. Noblemen in full plate armor on destrier war horses, the most expensive and feared military force of the 14th century. Behind them, more knights, and behind them, more still. 15 times they charge. 15 times they are stopped, not by enemy knights, not by castle walls, not by any weapon that has ever stopped a cavalry charge before, by arrows fired from a wooden bow, by farmers and Welsh peasants standing in a muddy field at a rate of 10 to 12 arrows per man per minute. When the sun goes down on August 26, 1346, at a place called Crecy en Ponthieu, the age of the armored knight as the dominant force in European warfare is effectively over. It will take another century for everyone to fully understand this. But it ends here, on this field, on this afternoon. By the end of this video, you will understand why the Battle of Crécy is the moment that made Agincourt possible, and why it is far less famous than the battle it made inevitable. You will learn how a wooden bow 6 feet long, requiring years of practice to use effectively, became the most revolutionary military weapon of the medieval world. You will learn why the King of Bohemia, blind and with no hope of surviving the battle, ordered his knights to tie their horses to his and lead him into the fighting anyway. And you will learn why Edward III, outnumbered, exhausted, and deep in hostile territory, chose to stop running and fight, and how that decision changed the course of European warfare forever. This is 1346, the year a stick changed everything. The Battle of Crécy takes place in the middle of the 100 Years' War, the long conflict between England and France over the French throne that begins in 1337 when Edward III formally claims to be the rightful king of France. His claim is not absurd. His mother is a French princess, and under certain interpretations of inheritance law, his claim is at least as strong as Philippe VI's. The French reject this entirely, and the war begins. By August 1346, Edward has landed in Normandy with 12 to 15,000 men, substantial but far smaller than France can field on home territory. His army has been raiding northern France for weeks, burning towns to force Philippe into battle. It has worked too well. Philippe has assembled a massive army and is closing in. Edward is tired, running out of room, blocked by rivers at every turn. On the evening of August 25th, Edward reaches Crecy. He looks at the ground. He stops running. To understand Crecy, you must understand the weapon that wins it. The English longbow is approximately 6 feet long, made from yew wood, capable of driving an arrow through chainmail at 200 yards. An experienced archer can fire 10 to 12 aimed arrows per minute, a rate of fire not matched by any firearm for centuries. Edward III has approximately 7,000 archers, the majority of his fighting force. They are not noblemen. They are Welsh and English yeomen who have spent years developing the strength and muscle memory required. Skeletons of longbow archers show significant skeletal deformation from the lifetime of practice required. Edward positions them on a slight ridge flanking his dismounted men-at-arms. He has chosen ground that forces any cavalry charge to advance uphill into the sun across uneven terrain. The French army that arrives at Crecy on the afternoon of August 26th is significantly larger than the English force. Estimates range from 30 to 60,000 men, though exact numbers are debated. At its core are the French knights, the finest heavy cavalry in Europe, armored from head to foot, riding war horses bred for exactly this purpose. Philippe VI's commanders advise him to wait. The army has been marching all day. The men are tired. The sun is in their eyes. Let them rest, form up properly, and attack tomorrow morning when conditions favor the French. Philippe initially agrees. Then his vanguard encounters the English, and the battle begins almost accidentally. Different contingents advancing without coordinated orders, the army's momentum carrying it forward before the king can halt it. The Genoese crossbowmen, contracted to fight for France, advance first. They are tired from the march, their bowstrings damp from a rain shower that has just passed, and they face English longbowmen who have kept their bowstrings dry. The Genoese loose a volley that falls short. The English response is devastating. Thousands of arrows landing among the crossbowmen simultaneously, killing and wounding hundreds in seconds. The Genoese break and run. The French knights, advancing behind them, ride through their own fleeing infantry and begin their charge. The first French cavalry charge hits the English longbow fire and is stopped. Horses and riders go down. The survivors wheel and retreat. A second charge is organized. It too is stopped. A third stopped. What happens over the following hours defies easy military explanation. The French knights are not cowards. They are among the most experienced and heavily armored soldiers in Europe. But they keep charging into the same lethal fire, uphill, into the setting sun, over ground increasingly littered with dead horses and men from previous charges. Medieval chroniclers count anywhere from 12 to 16 separate charges. Each one is met by the same response: thousands of arrows per minute from 7,000 archers who have had hours to rest while the French have been marching and fighting. The arrows cannot always penetrate full-plate armor at distance, but they kill horses. A knight without a horse in the middle of a medieval battle is a man in heavy armor who cannot move, cannot retreat, and cannot fight effectively. The field in front of the English line fills with dismounted knights, dead horses, and the wounded of a dozen successive charges. The English men-at-arms advance periodically into the chaos to finish what the archers have started. By the time darkness ends the fighting, the field belongs to Edward. Among the dead at Crecy is John of Bohemia, King of Bohemia, Count of Luxembourg, one of the most respected rulers in Europe. He is also completely blind. He asks his knights to lead him into the battle anyway. They tie their horses' reins to his, so he will not be separated in the chaos. They ride together into the fighting. All of them die. When Edward III finds John's body the next morning, he is so moved that he adopts John's personal motto as his own. 3 words in German: Ich dien, I serve. It remains the motto of the Prince of Wales today. When morning comes and the English walk the field of Crecy, what they find is a count of the dead that shocks even the victors. Among the dead, the King of Bohemia, the Duke of Lorraine, the Count of Flanders, the Count of Blois, 11 princes, 80 knights of the Order of St. John. Somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 French knights and noblemen, the flower of French chivalry, the men who would have inherited estates and titles and commanded armies for the next generation. The English losses are minimal. Estimates suggest perhaps 100 to 200 dead in total, the vast majority of casualties having fallen on the French side. Philippe VI survives. He rides from the battle wounded in the dark, reportedly crying out as he seeks shelter at a nearby castle that he is the King of France and has lost everything. Edward III gathers his army and continues north toward Calais, which he will besiege and capture. The campaign continues. The 100 Years' War continues. The Battle of Crécy has not ended the war, but it has ended something else entirely. For 3 centuries, the armored knight has been the dominant military force in Western Europe. The entire structure of feudalism, who owns land, who has power, who matters, is built around the knight. Lords provide land in exchange for military service. Military service means providing knights. Knights win wars. Crecy does not immediately destroy this system. The French continue to rely on knights for decades. But Crecy establishes something that cannot be ignored. An army of peasants with wooden bows can destroy an army of noble knights. The military supremacy that justified the social supremacy of the aristocracy has a crack in it that will only widen. The world will not immediately change, but it has been told that it is going to. 69 years after Crecy at Agincourt, Henry V of England faces a French army that outnumbers his several times over, with a depleted and exhausted force far from home. He uses longbow archers on the flanks, chooses ground that forces the French uphill through mud into arrow fire. The French charge. The archers fire. The result is almost identical to Crecy. Agincourt is famous. Shakespeare wrote the speech. Everyone knows the name. Crecy is not famous. No Shakespeare wrote about it. And yet without Crecy, there is no Agincourt. The tactics, the positioning, the understanding of how longbow archers on prepared ground can stop cavalry. All of it is worked out at Crecy. Agincourt is the performance. Crecy is the rehearsal. What makes 1346 remarkable is not the tactical innovation alone. It is what that innovation revealed about the relationship between military technology and social structure. The knight existed because the knight won wars. The entire hierarchy of medieval Europe, who owned land, who had power, who mattered, was built on that military reality. When a peasant with a bow can kill a nobleman in armor at 200 yards, that reality has changed. The nobleman is no longer invulnerable. His armor and his horse and his lifetime of military training can be overcome by a man who has spent his lifetime pulling a string of wood and sinew. It takes centuries for the social consequences to fully work themselves out. Feudalism does not collapse the day after Crecy. But the crack that Crecy puts in the foundations of medieval military supremacy is real, and it grows. The arrow that stopped the French knights at Crecy was not just a weapon, it was a statement, one that medieval society would spend the next 2 centuries trying to ignore, and then could not. 1346. The year a wooden bow fired by a Welsh peasant stopped the finest knights in Europe 15 times in a single afternoon, and put a crack in the foundations of medieval society that would take 2 centuries to fully collapse. If this story made you think, leave a comment. Do you think Crecy or Agincourt deserves to be better remembered? And why has history chosen the later battle over the one that made it possible? Subscribe to the Vault of Numbers. Every week, one number, one story history forgot to tell you. The next number in the vault? A king took 300 men to a narrow mountain pass. He knew they would not come back. He went anyway. The vault remains open.